I'm going to read you the first chapter of Stop Them Dead. Thursday, March the 25th, 2021. Tim Ruddle was a reluctant disciple of Winston Churchill's maxim that success is the ability to go from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. And if failure had been an Olympic sport, he could have taken gold countless times over, he rued, as he lay in bed, unable to sleep on this stormy, late March night. Unlike his wife, Sharon, who was, as usual, lost to the world beside him. She could sleep for England. And if sleeping was an Olympic sport, she'd sure as hell be on that podium. He so envied her that ability. He could not remember when he'd last had a good night's sleep. A night when he hadn't lain awake worrying about this latest chapter in their life, then needed to get up and pee. Once, moving to the countryside and buying a farm had been their dream. The good life. Their 2 kids, brought up away from all the violence and the other crap that London threw at you. Back to nature. The idyll that existed only in the pages of books. Not the grim reality of a farmer's life. The regulations, the subsidies that everyone else seemed eligible for, except themselves. They tried diversifying, opening a farm shop, and had recently been granted planning application to create a petting zoo and cafe. Both of them loved animals and had created a small revenue stream from alpaca walking. But so far, their biggest source of income from the old homestead farm was quite by accident and a very welcome surprise. Thanks to the massive rise in demand for dogs due to the lockdowns, the blue French bulldog puppies their beloved pet Brayley had given birth to just 7 weeks ago were worth a staggering £3,000 each. In breeding her, it had originally been their intention to keep at least one of the puppies, but the injection of badly needed cash they would get from the sales would help considerably with their new project. The 5 puppies were awaiting collection by their new owners in a week's time after their inoculations. Outside in the barn across the farmyard below their bedroom window, Rudy, the proud father, had begun barking. Rudy regularly barked at the wind, at rustling leaves, and most of all at enemy number 1, the aircraft that regularly flew overhead on their flight path to Gatwick Airport whenever the wind was blowing from the east, as it was tonight. Sharon frequently joked that Rudy was pretty effective. During the year they'd been here, not a single aeroplane had landed on their fields. But Rudy's bark was different tonight. Ferocious, as if he was genuinely troubled by something out there in the darkness. And after a few moments, Sally, their female Labrador, who rarely ever made a sound, as if she had a mute button permanently pressed, started up too. Worried the noise would wake their kids, Tim slipped out of bed and padded naked across to the window, parted the curtains, and peered out into the darkness. As he did so, he heard a sound, faint but distinct. The rumble of a diesel engine. 1. Or was it 2? He glanced at his watch. 1:23 a.m. Their farm was down a track over a mile from the road, and that was just a quiet country lane. They had never been troubled by cold callers, and no one ever drove up the rutted, potholed track by mistake. Anyone who came here had a reason, and the last nocturnal visitors, a couple of months ago, had been a bunch of youths from a nearby caravan site lamping rabbits. Norris Denning, their elderly farmhand, who'd come with the farm as a long-time employee and had been a godsend to them, lived with his wife in the former gamekeeper's cottage, a few hundred yards back down the track. He'd sent the lampers packing. The sound of the engines became louder, nearer. and as it did so, the barking of the dogs became more manic. Then Tim saw the silhouette of an off-roader vehicle with no lights on enter his farmyard. It was followed by another, a pickup truck. He felt a stab of fear. What the hell was going on? These weren't lampers. Then he saw the flare of a flashlight behind them, heard a shout, an angry shout. Norris's voice. "Hey!" the farmhand shouted. Sharon stirred. "Well, what's going on?" she murmured sleepily. "Call the police," Tim said, quietly and urgently. "Call 999 and say we have intruders." He pulled on some jeans and a sweatshirt, hurried downstairs and shoved his feet into his Wellingtons. Then he grabbed his Barber jacket and the large torch from the shelf above the boot rack by the front door, switched it on, opened the door, and shone the powerful beam ahead, and stared in bewilderment, anger momentarily masking his fear. In the beam, he saw Norris standing, feet planted, torch crooked under one arm, and pointing a shotgun at the intruders. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he yelled in his Sussex burr. "You clear off right away, you hear me?" "Grandad, go back to bed," one of them jeered at the elderly farmhand. Then he grabbed the shotgun by the barrel and ripped it out of Norris's hands.